I was 14 when this occurred, and I'm 22 now, but I still remember it in crisp detail, and it freaks me out to this day thinking what would have happened if things turned out differently. School was out for the summer, and I had convinced my mom to send me to Russia for a couple months to visit my grandparents. We moved to North America when I was little, and I hadn't been back much since. Plus, I thought it would be fun being on my first trip abroad by myself. She agreed, and off I went on my first solo transatlantic journey. My grandparents are great people and have always spoiled me and my mom rotten, and they were ecstatic that their only granddaughter wanted to visit. So they planned a little vacation of their own with me a month after I arrived to a popular beach resort city in Turkey. We were to stay at a 5-star resort in Ankara for 2 weeks, and I thought that was spectacular, getting to travel to not one but 2 countries in one summer, and to a fancy and exotic place like Turkey too. I was dying to go. But full disclosure, when I arrived to Russia, it wasn't really what I was expecting. My grandparents are really protective people, and I couldn't do much or go anywhere by myself. So it got boring pretty fast, and I spent most of my days playing PSP in my room. I was also accustomed to being active and wanted to do things like go jogging, which I did every day at home. So I gave my grandparents a hard time about that since they wouldn't let me go alone, and naturally they couldn't really keep up. Then after about a month, the time came to go to Turkey, and I was super excited to finally get some freedom and a change of scenery. I had been pent up at home too long. The resort they had picked was sprawled over a pretty large area. However, it was all very well secured and isolated from the rest of the city, and there was also a huge garden on the property which was ideally suited for jogging. This time I had my own room separate from my grandparents, so I took this chance to go off by myself and explore the grounds. Most of the time I would jog in the mornings when it was cooler with my big old iPod, so I couldn't hear anything that was going on around me, but I figured it was pretty safe since it was a nice hotel with plenty of tourists. Then I started to notice him, a pretty innocuous seeming gardener in his late 40s, early 50s in a green uniform. I remember he looked like a shriveled old date from too many years in the sun. He would always wave or say something in broken English as I passed by while he trimmed the shrubs or mowed the lawn. I would politely wave back, smile or nod, but I didn't really pay much attention. Fast forward about 10 days, and I was really enjoying myself. It was fun to swim in the pool and the sea, the food was great, and my grandparents had let up a lot so I could do more by myself. However, they didn't know about my morning runs in the gardens, and I wasn't going to tell them because I wasn't sure they would approve. So one morning around 7 a.m. while I'm jogging, I see the gardener again, but this time it's clear he's trying to get my attention. He waves at me and yells something, so I stop and pull out my earphones, trying to figure out what he wants. Now I know he works for the hotel, so I don't really suspect anything. He waves at me again and motions me to come forward. I'm confused, but I figure he wants to tell me something, so I politely approach. He's standing at a trail that goes deeper into the gardens and the foliage. He's smiling and gesturing, and I can see he's holding something in his hand. "Rosa," he says. "Beautiful Rosa." Then I notice he's holding a rose and extending it to me. At this point, I'm confused and a little freaked out about what the hell he's thinking, but I stay put. Usually the hotel staff there are chatty, but nice enough. My grandparents would always get pulled into conversations with them about things. I figure it's something like this now and don't want to be rude but still want to be on my way without offending the old man. He hands the flower to me and I take it, thinking maybe he wants to show me some roses that are in bloom. But he keeps waving and gesturing like he wants me to follow him, and stupidly I walk closer. He has another flower in his hand, and he backs away more. Then suddenly he stops and starts to lower it a little. That's when I notice he's holding his other hand behind his back too, and he's holding something. I look ahead up the trail and see a little cabin type thing, where I assume they keep their gardening supplies. Something clicks in my head and then I instantly back away. He sees me do that and tries to smile and saying, "Rosa," again, and moves the hand he's been holding behind his back while lurching towards me. That's when I see he's holding some kind of rag. Without hesitation, I drop the rose he handed me, turn around, and run for it at full speed. I don't stop to look back and run like mad back to the hotel. It's not until the doors close behind me and I'm among other people that I look back and see he's followed me. I don't see him anymore and my heart is beating like crazy. I go back to my hotel room and wait for my grandparents to wake up. I never told them any of what happened that day and spent the rest of my vacation glued to their side. I thought that if I said anything, they would get even more paranoid about my safety and blame me for wandering off on my own. Also, I didn't want to ruin the remaining days for them. I saw the gardener once more on the beach. I remember him talking to a security guard. I remember growing very uncomfortable and sinking into my sun chair when I saw him. Then he looked at me and smiled. I scowled at him as he mouthed the word "Rosa" tauntingly and smiled again. I still remember the anger bumbling in my stomach and how much I wanted to cleave his face in, but I just froze and stared. He walked away and I went back to pretending nothing ever happened. Needless to say, I never went on any more morning jogs, and neither did I want to until long after the summer had ended and I'd returned back home.
The following story takes place in 2004. The dialogue is paraphrased but accurately conveys what happened. Every year during March break, my family would drive roughly 2 hours into the city from our rural town to enjoy a college basketball tournament. We routinely stayed at a large, reputable hotel minutes from the downtown core, and were no strangers to the city. However, this year was different. There had been a rash of violent muggings and swarmings in the downtown core of the city, which had left many severely injured. I remember reading about these attacks in the newspaper and feeling scared. Those reports rattled me in a way typical news stories didn't, possibly because I wasn't used to the threat of violence so close to home. It was Saturday night around 11 p.m. and my family, my mom, dad, and my little sister were winding down and preparing for bed. It's worth mentioning at this point that my mother is naturally paranoid, much more so than other moms. While it can be annoying at times, it often leaves us prepared for bad situations. Tonight would be one of those times. I was sitting on the second of two beds, furthest from the entrance to the room, when there was a knock at the door. "Room service," a voice called out. My parents glanced at each other, and my mom motioned for my dad to look through the peephole in the door. "We didn't order anything," said my dad as he sized up the short, stocky white male standing outside our door. He had with him a trolley with what appeared to be a meal on it and was wearing a green hotel uniform. "Are you sure?" he responded. "I've got an order here for room 4109. The guy at the door didn't sound pushy or out of place at all. In fact, if it wasn't for the recent violence in the city, we probably wouldn't have had our guard up in the first place. However, that night my parents were certainly cautious, and my father firmly told the man at the door that we didn't order any food. He left politely, without an incident. We had little reason to be suspicious as my dad wanted to chalk it up to a mistake on the hotel's behalf and got to bed. However, my mother eventually persuaded him to call the front desk to check if everything was on the up and up. 15 minutes or so after the man had left our door, my dad got off the phone with the front desk. "They have no record of us ordering food and their room service staff wear white, not green," he said grimly. I noticed my mother's face whiten and my sister looked scared. The hotel immediately sent security up to our floor to see if the intruder was still around. They checked on us, then they went about searching the floor. Security came back to our room a few minutes later, telling us they had found an empty trolley in the stairwell, but there was no one to be found. With that, they departed, and we triple-checked the locks on the door before hitting the hay. The next morning, I was the first one awake. I didn't want to turn on the TV and wake my family, and there was no newspaper in the room. So I booted up my dad's laptop and checked the local newspaper website. The first headline read, "Man stabbed outside City Hotel." Apparently at roughly 11:30 the previous night, right after we had turned away the fake hotel employee at our door, a pedestrian had been attacked outside our hotel in the middle of the sidewalk. He had been stabbed twice and then badly beaten in plain sight, yet his wallet wasn't stolen. The article went on to say that there was no apparent motive for the mugging. It was pure violence for the sake of violence. It also mused as to why the pedestrian had been stabbed to the point where he couldn't fight back, but then beaten by hand. I woke my parents up right away and showed them the article. My mother became very nervous and checked about the room while my dad looked very angry and reached for the phone. Naturally, we contacted the police and told them our story about the previous night. We provided as much information about the man at our door as possible, thinking he may have been responsible for the assault. Thankfully, we had several inches of a locked door between us and the fake employee. It may have just saved our lives.
This happened a couple years ago when I was working at a hotel. I mostly forgot about it until it recently came up in a therapy session, and I figured I'd throw it up on the old LNM. A couple of years ago, I was working front desk at a hotel in a small town off of the interstate in Pennsylvania. I'm not sure how other hotels do it, but unless it was a busy summer, front desk agents worked alone on every shift. Since it was second shift, that meant all the housekeepers had left hours ago. My manager was gone for the day, the maintenance man was gone, and I was the only person in this 3-story hotel, with the exception of about 4 rooms that were being rented. Since it was about 7 at night, I'm pretty sure all but one of the guests were out to dinner. Even as a woman, it never really bothered me to work by myself at night. I was cautious but never creeped out too badly. I mostly spent the long, boring hours either catching up on homework or watching Jeopardy on the lobby TV, but I'm not sure what I was doing when he walked in. The sun had already set, but it was still light out. He came through the front doors and walked over to the desk. I couldn't see his car anywhere, which was odd since usually check-ins park under the overhang to unload luggage. I didn't think much of it and asked him how he was doing. He was maybe 5'8", medium build, dark hair, glasses, looked like a normal 20-something kid. He said he wanted to know if I could help him, and proceeded to go into a very heartfelt story about how he had been to the other hotels off this exit and they all turned him down. He said his sister ran away from home a while ago and that he came all the way from California to pick her up, from I think New Jersey, being that he was from California and it was starting to be gross winter weather here. I laughed a little and said, "Yeah, sorry, it's so awful here." He paused. He stared at me completely stone-faced as if I just made a joke at his expense. "What do you mean?" "Just the weather." I tried to recover. I was used to making worthless small talk and jokey observations with guests, but nobody had ever taken anything I said casually, so seriously? It's not exactly California weather outside. "I love it here. I think it's beautiful," he said, and again stared. I didn't know what to say. Think about it. What would you say to that? I tried to laugh it off and said I'd trade him, but he just stared. Finally he goes, "Anyway, the reason I'm here is that I've been driving almost non-stop for a couple days, and I've honestly got almost no money to me." Here it comes, I thought. Some guy is going to ask me for a room at a crazy low rate because he sees the parking lot is almost empty. Before I can say anything, he continues, "I don't want a room. I just need a place to take a shower really quick. I swear I won't touch anything or mess anything up. I honestly just need a shower really badly." I thought about it for a minute. At the time, I hated my manager. I knew she'd never allow it, and for whatever reason, nothing in my brain screamed stranger danger, so I finally agreed. He told me he could give me his driver's license to hold until he was done, but I trusted him. He ran out to his car to get some clothes, and I gave him a handful of tiny soaps and shampoo and some towels so he didn't fuck up the ones the maids put in the room this morning. I put him in a room right down the hall from the front desk so that I could keep an eye on him. He went in and I went back to watching YouTube videos. A couple minutes later, he comes down to the desk. I don't know what's wrong with me. I can't figure out how to turn the shower on. Can you show me? I figure you're thinking exactly what I think when I look back on this situation. But no, I didn't see why this was a dangerous situation at the time. A young woman alone in a hotel room with a stranger who hasn't left any kind of trail or identification, with no other employees on the property, almost no other guests. So yeah, I'm stupid. I got up and switched the phone lines from switchboard to cordless and took the receiver with me into the back. I grabbed the keys and locked up the front desk area before following him down the hallway to his room. I had easily 50 pounds on him and about 2 inches of height, so I guess I felt secure. I opened the door and walked in, while he followed behind me. I heard the door click and realized immediately that I wanted to leave. I walked to the bathtub, turned on the water, and ran my hand under the stream a few times. "Just pull up on that when you're ready," I said, and scurried to the door. I could hear him saying something behind me, but I opened the door and walked out. I got back to the front desk, locked the door behind me, and sat down. At this point, I was a little shaken at what had just happened, but talked myself down by reminding myself that if he was going to rape or murder me, he would have by now. Again, dumb. Finally, he comes down the hallway and hands me the towels and empty bottles of shampoo and body wash. He says he's hungry, so I point to the breakfast area in the lobby and tell him there's some apples and bananas sitting out from breakfast and that he can take some for the road. I remember hinting that I wanted him to leave. He walks the few yards over to the counter and grabs a banana and an apple, then comes back to the front desk. "What did you say your name was again?" "Queen Frostine," I said hesitantly. He can see my name tag. "How old are you?" 23. "Can I ask you a question, Queen Frostine?" He seemed so confident, almost robotic, like this was Groundhog Day and he has relived this uncomfortable, awkward half hour 50 times before and has no reason to think anything is weird or spooky or inappropriate. I was standing now, and I moved a little farther from the desk, casually putting my back against the wall and adding another foot or so of space between us. "Do you have a boyfriend, Queen Frostine?" I said I did. He asked me, "Really?" I wasn't lying, but perhaps he thought I was. I wondered. I assured him I did, and he gave me an odd look. The best way to describe it is that he saw something funny in his head and was amused by it, but more amused by the fact that he was the only person who could see it. "That's really weird," he continued. "Why is it weird?" I asked. He told me it was weird again, and I racked my brain trying to think of what he meant. Was he implying I'm ugly? Did he think I was a lesbian? Any and all solutions came flooding over me so fast, yet none of them fit. Why is that so weird? It just is. He smiled a little. "Okay," I let out. I stood there staring at the floor a little bit, then back at him. "Anyway, I gotta go. Thanks for the shower and the fruit," he said as he walked out the door. I watched his car pull away, but couldn't tell what kind it was. It was that weird kind of time in the early winter where it goes from dusk to pitch black night in what feels like 10 minutes. I sat back down, rattled. I couldn't believe how uncomfortable I was all of a sudden. My stomach burned inside, and I was relieved he was gone. For the first time, I felt really, truly scared in that hotel by myself. I got up and ran to the laundry room that connects to the front desk. I made sure the door leading to the lobby on that side was locked. It was. I ran to the other side of the laundry room and skidded into the door that leads out to the public hallways. I checked to make sure it was locked. It wasn't. I usually didn't lock it on the off chance that I'd go to the bathroom and forget my keys some nights. I slammed it shut and latched it. The phone rang. I walk over to pick up the cordless that I'd laid next to the switchboard. "Thank you for calling. This is all the further I got. "Hey, Queen, Frostine." I paused for a second, shocked that someone messed up my spiel. It definitely wasn't my boyfriend's voice, nor was it the maintenance man. "It's Adam. I was just in there." I could literally feel my heart sink. I looked at the door but couldn't see him there. The darkness on the outside unsettled me, and I slinked behind the doorway to the front desk and into the laundry room. I didn't know if he was outside watching me, but I didn't want to be seen. I mumbled an, "Oh, hey," trying to be casual and failing. He continued, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know why I said it was weird that you have a boyfriend." I peeked out again to see if he was at the door yet, but nobody was there. "I think it's weird that you have a boyfriend, but you still let a guy come in and shower." I could feel my pulse quicken. "I mean, that's so weird." "Is it?" I asked, trying to keep my composure as I ran through the laundry room and rechecked the doors. Then I remembered the only door that wouldn't lock. The door directly to the outside, the back of the hotel where employees would sneak out to smoke weed. The latch had been broken for a while, and our manager decided that decorating the lobby for Thanksgiving came before safety issues in terms of budget. I stepped back to the doorway that led the front desk to the laundry room and locked that one behind me. "Yeah," he continued. "I mean, you have a boyfriend and yet you still let me come in and shower? I don't know. Don't you think that's weird?" "No," I said, trying to end the conversation in a short tone. "That's all I wanted to say anyway. I'll see you soon, Queen Frostine," he finished almost threateningly. I hung up the phone. I called my sister and told her to send her husband over, but she insisted on calling the police. I made her promise not to, as I didn't want to lose my job. I called the maintenance man since I knew he lived right up the road and told him to hurry over. I then called my boyfriend and told him to please come. I wanted my bases covered so that someone would show up within 10 to 15 minutes. I never heard from him again, and we all kept it a secret from my manager to keep me from getting fired. I hadn't thought about this for a while, but looking back on it, it's entirely creepy to me.
A while ago, I was staying at an upscale hotel in the safe area of a large Midwestern city. I'm a 16-year-old female and I was in a room all by myself, with my parents a few doors down. In theory, this isn't unsafe by any means, but I had bad luck on this particular trip. Our first night there passed without incident, me in my room, my parents in theirs. I watched a pay-per-view movie and ate way too much from the snack bar. I didn't have any reason to feel unsafe. The next morning, we did the usual tourist stuff that no one does when visiting a new city. As we ate breakfast in the hotel restaurant, I noticed a man who looked to be in his 60s staring at me for an abnormally long amount of time. I won't lie, as a young, decently attractive female, I'm used to getting the occasional inappropriate look from a guy, so I ignored it and chalked up to him either being a perv or thinking I looked like his granddaughter or something. The next night, my parents allowed me to meet up with a friend for dinner who lived in the area. He met me in the hotel lobby and we had a nice dinner, and then we went back to the hotel for drinks. Coincidentally, the same man had been eyeing me earlier was at the bar. This time, I knew I didn't remind him of his granddaughter. Even with my buff guy friend next to me, his eyes traced every curve of my body. I felt unsettled and mentioned it to my friend, Ethan, who glanced over and also seemed really weirded out by how obvious this guy was leering. We had left the bar quickly and by now it was around 12:30 a.m. Ethan walked me to the elevators of the hotel, and once I pushed the button, he left. I wish I would have asked him to stay, because as soon as he walked away, my creeper came rounding the corner and stood there waiting with me for the elevator. I felt so uncomfortable knowing that he would be seeing what floor I was going to, but it hadn't occurred to me to get off on a different floor at the time. When we were in the elevator together, I tried to keep my eyes averted from his, but they literally bore into my body. He kept trying to step closer and I kept backing up, too scared to even speak. What freaked me out even more was that he hadn't pressed a separate elevator button, so he planned on getting off when I did. When I got to my floor, I almost ran to my room, and the guy just stood at the end of the hallway, waiting to see where I was going. I stayed in my room for 15 minutes until I was sure he was gone before I told my parents what had happened. They were freaked out and told the hotel staff, but there was no sign of the guy, and it was really late, so I just locked my door and tried to get to sleep. I almost drifted off when I heard a knock at my door. Now, I'm not an idiot. I've creeped this subreddit in no sleep for a long time, so I didn't just go and open the door at nearly 2 a.m. Instead, I turned on a light and froze. At this point, my intuition had kicked in and I knew it was the guy. I was nearly in tears, but the knocking kept continuing, harder and harder, so I finally shouted and asked who it was. The voice that replied to me was the most chilling thing I have ever heard. High-pitched but growly, almost giggly, and so disturbing I can barely describe it.
It's hotel staff. Please let me in.
I was terrified. I looked through the peephole and confirmed that it was the same creepy old guy. I locked myself in the bathroom and called my dad's phone. He has a habit of always keeping his ringer on, so he answered me almost immediately and I tried to tell him what was wrong through my tears. The guy from before is at my door. And what happened next gives me nightmares. My dad naturally went into superhero mode and opened his door to find the old man in just a robe, masturbating. It's pretty obvious to piece together what he was planning, and I still dream about it and have severe PTSD from it. My dad slugged the dude in the face and made sure he didn't move an inch while my mom called hotel security. We pressed charges and the guy's in prison now on what I think are assault with the intent to commit rape charges, but I could be wrong. So this happened quite a few years ago. I was probably 12 or 13 at the time, and was staying at a hotel with my parents, aunt, uncle, and cousin, who was a year older than I am. One night, our parents decided to go get coffee together at the little cafe in the lobby of this hotel. Now, it's important to know that this was one of those hotels that was set up over a few buildings with its hallway set up outside the hotel. You could access the halls by the stairs on the corner of the buildings. The cafe my parents went to was several buildings away from the one we were staying, but that wasn't a problem for my cousin and I, seeing as the pool was just downstairs. At about 8 o'clock, we texted our parents on our flip phone, put on our bathing suits, and went downstairs to the pool. Things were fine at first. We swam around and caught up on things that had happened at school, the boyfriend she'd broken up with. Eventually, we ended up just quietly floating on our backs, watching the stars, without looking over at my cousin. I said something to the effect of, "Whoa, nice night, huh?" in a weird voice, hoping to earn a laugh. When I heard a guy's chuckle, though, I sat up in the water really fast, my face quickly growing red. I hadn't noticed that I had floated away from my cousin and was now next to some guy. He was probably in his early 20s and offered me a friendly glance and eyebrow raising.
Yeah, I guess it is.
At 12, I was cripplingly shy, so I just gave a nervous laugh and hightailed it back over to my cousin, who promptly burst into laughter and started making fun of me, jokingly demanding if he was cute and if he really had laughed at that dumb voice I had made. I was too embarrassed to find the situation funny and stayed really close to her, not daring to glance back down to the other side of the pool where he was now sitting on the edge. My cousin, Lizzie, just moved on, chatting about random things as we waited in the pool. She got progressively quieter, though eventually playfully splashing me to get my attention. "Your new boyfriend is still watching us," she noted, and even though she was still grinning, her voice didn't sound quite so teasing anymore. I glanced over to where, sure enough, he was still sitting on the edge of the pool, watching us. She splashed me again. "Dude, don't pay any attention. You may not know much about guys, but I do, and the trick is to just ignore him." She wasn't exactly wrong. I was homeschooled and never talked to any guys older than I was, and in my eyes she was an expert on worldly wisdom. I watched her face, mimicking her and playfully splashing back. Maybe we should go get Mom or your mom or something, I said as she shook her head. No, let's just go back to the hotel room. I don't want my mom to freak out. That seemed like a good idea to both of us. Her mom was kind of terrifying when she was mad. We can text her when we get up there. I nodded, moving and pushing myself out of the pool, grabbing our towels and shoes. She made some joke about what was going on, but I didn't hear it. The guy was standing up too, though he seemed pretty casual about getting his own things. When I looked back at her, her expression confirmed she had seen it, but she kept putting on her shoes. I followed, walking close behind her when she turned to head towards the stairs. We began walking up them, both of us a little nervous but trusting it was just coincidence, until we heard footsteps behind us on the stairs. A brief glance down showed the same guy just a flight behind us, meeting my gaze with a little grin. He didn't seem drunk or high, at least from my sheltered perspective. "Lizzie?" I said, quietly trying to alert her that he was so close. She was moving up the stairs much faster now. "I know. Let's go to the wrong floor. We can loop back around and then just go to our rooms. We'll call Mom once we get there," she promised, seeming more strained, her pretty face screwed up a bit with anxiety. As an avid reader of mystery, it seemed like the best possible choice, so we got off 2 floors early and speed walked down the outdoor hall and around the corner. As soon as we were out of sight, Lizzie grabbed my hand, taking off at a run and nearly jerking me off my feet. Before that moment, I hadn't been legitimately scared, but fear is infectious. I squeezed her hand, keeping up pace as footsteps that weren't ours began echoing on the same floor we had chosen to loop around. We whipped around the next corner, and the next, until we breathlessly found the stairs again and took them 2 at a time. It prompted a high-pitched squeal from Lizzie, who, at this point, was dragging me along more than anything else. I was scared out of my wits and practically paralyzed, tripping up the stairs and down the hall on our floor. She jammed the key into our room's door and pushed me inside, slamming the door and drawing the blinds as soon as we were inside, bursting into tears as soon as the door was locked. I felt numb. She was crying more from adrenaline than anything, but after she had calmed down, she wasted no time picking up the phone and trying to call her mom, who didn't pick up. Then my mom, who similarly didn't have her phone on. At the age of 12, it felt like we must have waited hours sitting on our bed, hugging each other and shivering from still wearing wet bathing suits. We did end up calming down though, offering each other quiet rationalizations of what had happened. Maybe we had just picked the guy's floor. Maybe he hadn't been trying to follow us. When you're scared, it's honestly surprisingly easy to eventually just believe things were all coincidence. Much calmer, we decided to do a really dumb thing. Go out to the car to get Lizzie's activity bag, full of snacks and her Game Boy. It seemed like an alright idea at the time, since we both believed it had just been a coincidence, and since we were both starving. We wrapped ourselves in towels. She grabbed her mom's key and her cell phone, and we made a plan at the hotel room door. We lock ourselves in the car if this guy comes back, and call whatever numbers we can think of. If he appears while we're walking back, we'd go to the lobby and find our parents. It seemed pretty foolproof at the time. Now, just a stupid idea. Nothing happened until we got to the parking lot in front of our building, when we hear a voice shout at us from one of the halls.
"Hey girls, where the hell do you think you're going, cuties?"
I looked back behind us to where creepy guy was leaning on the rails on our floor. Lizzie gave some sort of unearthly screech and grabbed my hand again, dragging me along before I could get a better look. She yanked open the car door and dove inside as I tumbled after her, locking the door as soon as we were both inside. As soon as she had caught her breath, she untangled herself from me and pulled herself into the back of the minivan, back into the furthest row and motioning for me to follow. I did so, hunkering down with her between the seats. I had never felt like my own breathing was loud before, but as we lay there in dead silence, it seemed ungodly loud. Then, tapping. I squeezed my eyes shut, not even wanting to know what he was doing outside the car, but the sound of tapping was unmistakable, like he was just drumming his fingers on the window. Lizzie pulled me tight, not moving, like he wouldn't be able to see us if we just held still enough. I don't know how long we stayed there, Frozen in terror, I wasn't sure what was worse, the darkness of keeping my eyes closed, or what it would be like to look up and see him standing there. And just like that, he stopped. Neither of us moved for another 10 minutes. I started crying, scared to death. Lizzie just holding deathly still until she began pushing me to sit up, hands rough. I realized what she was doing a moment later when I heard her dialing on the phone and the sound of each of our parents' voicemail. She didn't call 911. Maybe now that we're older, we would have, but at 12, 911 was a number reserved for house fires and murders, not guys in their 20s following little girls to the car. Dumb, right? We eventually ran out of our car and back to the hotel, slamming and locking the door and falling into a sobbing heap inside. When our parents did get back, they bemoaned not having had their cell phones on and soothed us, eventually convincing us that, though the guy was creepy, we hadn't been in any danger. I think they thought that was the truth, and honestly, it was what we all wanted to believe. Lizzie and I saw him a few more times after that, mostly at night when he sat by the pool and offered us a little grin every time we passed, but we were always with our parents until we left the hotel. When he saw us packing our bags and leaving with our parents, he offered us a little wave that no one but me saw, mouthing something to me. "See you later, cutie." I didn't tell my parents. It didn't seem worth it. It's not till now that I realize how creepy this guy really was. And while he could be just some harmless guy who thought it was hilarious to follow preteen girls around a hotel, I'm glad I never saw him again. So, long story short, let's not meet creepy pool guy. Hey guys, thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join the Nightmare Army. I'm always looking for new soldiers in my Nightmare Nation. So as always, I want to give a big thank you to Southern Cannibal for helping me out with this video. Thank you so much, man. You are awesome. And if you guys haven't, please check out Southern Cannibal's channel. I definitely think you guys will like him. So anyways, guys, how's everybody's Wednesday doing? Or, I should say, how's everybody's hump day doing? You know, when someone goes to me all the time and they're like, "Hey man, how's your Wednesday going?" I'm always like, "Oh, you mean hump day?" Humpalicious, I guess. Sorry guys, dirty minds everywhere. You know guys, actually, I actually started playing Destiny again, and I got off the game last time just because I got really annoyed with it, the raids, just a whole load of annoying stuff. And last night I played it again, and I honestly forgot how long some of the missions are in that game. I was playing this one mode called Challenge of Elders. I think you guys have probably heard of that. Maybe I'm just dumb because I haven't played it in a while. But I was playing that with my friends, and I was just like, Jesus Christ, this is so long. I want to frickin' play Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2 or something. Which, by the way, if anybody has played Ninja Gaiden, great fucking game. I absolutely love that game. I beat the first one. Man. I'm not gonna lie, I think Dark Souls is a bit harder, but Ninja Gaiden is a little bit up there. That game is pretty bitchy at times. I mean, Sigma 2 plays a lot better, but yeah, difficulty level, very stressing. I feel like some of you in the comments are going to be like, why the hell do you torture yourself with these hard games? To be honest, I like a challenge, and, yeah. Anyways, guys, thank you all for watching yet again, and just remember, the best ideas always come out of nightmares.